Each episode of the Blind Alchemy Podcast is designed to be helpful. Expect comedy. Do not expect consistency or sense to be made. I am Podbot. I was inspired by the Lion Good podcast. Listen to that show. Today's episode features special guest, TikTok sensation Lunchbox, as well as Buck Johnson. The topics of discussion within the context of Gnosticism are the phrase, God is the only God, what is the name of God, and what is in a name.
I'm not sure. Blind Alchemy is the name of the podcast. And the Blind Alchemy is my show. I am free as there's nothing wrong with my fucking mic. It's in my mouth. All right, folks. Hello and welcome to the Blind Alchemy Podcast. I am your host, the Blind Alchemist. Better yet, your guest upon this quest. And I am coming at you live from the kitchen with this rendition of reality as we know it. We are all one, and there is nothing new under the sun that shines down here upon the island of mind, which is somewhere adrift in the sea of frequency that creates all of reality. You see, we are connected through this energy. Now, I would like to thank you for joining us today. Today's guest, TikTok sensation Lunchbox. And with us, once again, returning from the graveyard, our resident armchair philosopher, Buck Johnson. Buck, how you doing?
Doing good.
Oh, good.
Thanks for having me. How you doing, Blind Alchemist?
I'm great, grand, love to be here.
Good to see you again, Lunchbox. How you doing?
What?
Lunchbox, thank you for being with us on the show.
I am elated.
Elated. Oh, that explains the jumping jacks and the backflip you were doing earlier.
That's right. Is it true that if you're blind, your other senses are heightened?
Yes.
I think that is true. I think the mind compensates.
Mr. Blind Alchemist over there, his other senses are heightened.
Yes. I do alchemy by sound. So I take my measurements. Oh, that's too much.
There's a whole episode on what the blind part means. If you haven't listened to it, DJ SKS or DJ Lunchbox or Mr. Lunchbox, SKS Lunchbox.
DJ Lunchbox.
I recommend you go back and listen to episode 1. It's a good one.
Have you actually listened to any of these podcasts?
You sent me one or two.
Are you up to date?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a whole platform, 2 platforms now. We're on the YouTube and the Spotify. Find us over there. And I also recommend looking up the Lion Goat podcast. Those guys are funny motherfuckers. I swear to God, the Aussie boys are brilliant.
I tried to add you as a friend on TikTok, but I don't guess you accepted my request.
Who, me?
Yeah, but my TikTok doesn't work right, so I'm not sure if people are getting friend requests that I post or not. I've had a couple of people respond, only been able to follow 2 people, because whenever I click follow on someone, it says you're following them, and then if I browse somewhere else, they disappear from my follow list, so I don't know what's going on.
That is bizarre. How bizarre.
That is weird. How bizarre.
I use the web browser app instead of the phone app, but that may be the problem. It's so sketchy, I don't know.
I've been reading all these articles come out about Temu. I'm sure you've seen the ads at some point in time. And when I saw them a long time ago, I looked into it and I was like, oh, this is like drop shipping for Chinese people.
Drop shipping, what is it? AliExpress for the States, basically.
Yeah. I never got into it. And now it's coming out that how dangerous it is. And I'm like, duh.
It's like Alibaba.
Well, it's literally just an app for drop shipping. So, it makes it easier for you.
Yeah.
But if you live in China, your access to the cheap goods is multiplied a bit. They're not even handling the product. They just know who to tell to send it to you. You want to see my tiny, useless guitar?
Yeah, dude. Definitely.
This is my
Tiny useless guitar.
little Washburn Rover.
Ah, it's a traveling. I like those. How's it sound?
Dry.
Are you a player?
Yeah, really dry and shallow.
That's not bad, though.
I inherited
I
it.
mean, you can chord around on it.
It has better action than my Amazon special. I have a cheap Amazon guitar.
Uh-huh.
Whole tune. but the action is higher than Hendrix.
Speaking of action, I had this guitar that I inherited. At this point, it's probably 50 years old. It had this horrible action on it, and I tried to learn guitar on it when I was 12. I couldn't get my fingers around it to play chords and learn how to play, so I actually put it down until I was 19 and picked it back up again. But about 5 years ago, I learned how to set up guitars myself, and I started looking at it really closely, and I was like, holy shit, this guitar has an adjustable bridge.
Oh, wow.
This whole time. I could have just lowered and so I lowered the action, and now it plays amazing. Yeah. It plays great. It's a rare thing with acoustics to have adjustable bridges, but it's just a much better guitar than I ever thought it was. A great irony of the universe.
I go to a lot of estate sales. That's where I find my old books. And I had gone to one a couple of weeks ago, get into one of the bedrooms, and there's a Martin guitar case leaned up.
Nice.
And the sticker on it says $3,000.
Yeah.
So I'm not even touching it. Like, I'm not even going to open the case. I know it's a beautiful guitar.
Uh-huh.
And this lady comes in and grabs the top of the lid and just jerks it open and is like, do you play? Like, yeah, but I ain't touching that thing.
No.
Did you play it?
Hell no. $3,000. I'm not touching it.
Oh, you should have, man.
I've played one before, but
yeah,
in an estate sale environment, if anything happened, I don't want to be liable.
Right.
Yeah, I hear you.
It was nerve-wracking to watch this lady jerk on the lid. Yeah, they know how to build guitars.
Yeah, they just know how to do it.
Quality craftsmanship.
If Jesus was here today, which football team would he root for?
The Cowboys.
Yeah.
There isn't a Doves, is there? I can't recall a team that's the Doves as the mascot. So I don't know.
My kids go to a private Christian school, and they were having a football game with another privately funded indoctrination camp. And I was like, okay, we're going to see which team God favors. It's all going to be decided right here on this field. Which team can pray the hardest?
Oh, wow.
I also find it really funny, the songs that they play at these football games. Like AC/DC gets played a lot. Welcome to the Jungle gets played a lot from Guns N' Roses. These fine Christian establishments, you know?
Yeah. Just steeped in secularism. Yeah. Today we're going to try to break down a phrase that I found scratched on a bathroom wall. God is the only God. Which God is the only God? And why does the Christian God not seem to ever have a name? Anybody?
He has a name.
What is that now?
They're not supposed to say it.
It's like Voldemort. Isn't his name I Am?
We don't really have...
I thought his name was I Am.
He is the great I Am.
See, now that's...
Is he the supreme entity, the supreme infinite?
Is he a he?
I don't know. That's what we're trying to find out. That's what this whole show is about. Understanding God a little better than we do currently.
I don't think we're supposed to.
I disagree.
Well, I don't think we're supposed to understand the nature of God.
Maybe not the nature of God, but our relationship to God and the creation in which we dwell, perhaps.
Your relationship with God. Now that is something to be examined.
Definitely, always.
Yes, when one talks into the mirror, one should always ask themselves, why am I talking to this mirror?
Definitely.
I mean, it's an inanimate object.
Oh my God. Ted, the fucking 5-hour lecture you gave me about coughing and muting. The first 4 episodes. So Ted, stop. 6. Ted, see what I'm saying here, Ted, is every time we do this, Ted, it's different. Setups are different. The program is different. The muting process is different. Now you don't want it even. Now you want me to sit across the room from the microphone and yell. I don't understand the fucking you're doing to me, Ted. Well, editing stuff isn't your purview, Ted. We send that shit out. You just push record. Ted, I know you've been in a drug fugue state for about 9 years. Well, I mean, you're right, Ted. That is a complication. But, you know, those fine, fabulous folks over at Hairline Production who do our editing, they do a great job. I'm sure they're frustrated with the interns and your nonsense a lot of the times. But, you know, they do what they paid to do, and that is edit things. Good luck, guys, with all our episodes.
Mr. Alchemist, do you think I'm ever gonna have a chance to meet the guys at Hairline Productions? I mean, they've heard a lot of my philosophy and my theories, and I've never once had a conversation with them. Are they ever even gonna publish this stuff? I mean, we did this almost a year ago.
Oh, yeah, this stuff is published. Oh, my goodness. Ted, settle down.
Such an asshole, that fucking Ted. I can't believe you're still working with this Ted guy, Blind Alchemist. You gotta get rid of this Ted guy. How many times do I have to tell you?
He's loyal.
He put holes in your walls. He's burned down his house. He keeps fucking your legal team. He's doing cocaine in the studio. I mean, your mixing board is literally full of cocaine at this moment. You could probably just sell the mixing board and make enough money to sponsor a new engineer. Please get away from this Ted guy. You gotta get away from this Ted guy.
Ted's loyal, and he's cheap.
Sorry, Ted. You can start listening again.
You're right, Lunchbox. Ted is very difficult sometimes. Very difficult pain in
No,
the
this
ass.
is me. This is Buck Johnson talking here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lunchbox. See, now stop. We were talking with Ted, but
I'm sorry.
you're interrupting the
If you
conversation.
need to have a conversation with Ted, go ahead. Just do your thing. Feel free. Be yourself. You're free as a bird. You are the Blind Alchemist. You are the philosopher of the ages.
You're absolutely right.
Sorry about the interruption, Lunchbox.
Are you as free as a bird now?
Well, no, I am tethered to this microphone in this chair for this hour and a half, 5 days, however long we're here doing this complicated topic.
There is no topic.
Trying not to offend anybody is difficult these days, especially with this. And the interns are on something.
You got to keep those interns down, man. That's another issue that we have.
I can't control the interns. I'm sorry, Lunchbox. This is wholly unprofessional, but I have, addicts and nimwits around me all the time.
They make the world go round.
Yeah, that's true.
I hope you're not talking about me.
They are night shift, aren't they?
Plus, they come in handy as
That's for damn sure.
a shield when God displays his wrath. You can just throw the interns up in front of them, catch the brunt of the blow.
The Nitwit Legion as a shield for God's wrath.
That's right.
I like this concept.
Sit back, relax, take a deep breath, and when you feel it in your chest, exhale into the now moment and join me, the Blind Alchemist, as we conduct a little blind alchemy.
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors. Just imagine this could be your advertisement. Please reach us at the Blind Alchemy Podcast at gmail.com to provide sponsorship. And now, back to the show.
So, one of the things that I really don't understand is when people pray for things. As sad as it is, if you have a loved one that gets sick, that was the will of God, right? I mean, everything is for a purpose. So if we pray for that person, are we asking God to change his mind?
Yeah, there are definitely some peculiar semantics to prayer life, I think.
I think in certain religious experiences, some people are better at counseling others about the nature of prayer and what types of prayer are the right kind of prayer. I think there is something to the idea that there is a right kind of prayer, and prayer for strictly selfish things is not the type of prayer that is spoken about, at least in the Christian Bible. So let's say the New Testament. Let's focus on that. If you look at the teachings of Jesus, what he would counsel you to pray for in the case of, say, like a loved one that has a terminal illness, is the ability to accept the situation that you're in with gratitude and with grace and with the presence of mind to try to foresee the wisdom in the things that don't make sense. I think this concept of the individual relationship with God is mistaken as the individual ability to request wishes to come true, for whatever your selfish desires are. I think that that's problematic. Not only are those people not only do they not know how to pray, but they don't get what the point of prayer is. It's like they're missing the entire message of the religion if they're just like, I hope I can pass this test today. Please, God, help me drive to the dry cleaner safely. I mean, you're missing the whole point, I think, if we were in that situation. I could be wrong.
Well, the reason I was saying was because the way that people communicate with God seems to change between the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Sure, absolutely.
In the Old Testament, there's more of a negotiation with God. There's like a conversation instead of just a praise, and begging for stuff. There's people that walk with God and converse with God.
Yeah.
Right.
One of my favorite old school films, if you ever see it, is Fiddler on the Roof. And throughout the movie, Tevye just talks to God. He doesn't stop and kneel and pray and clasp hands. He just talks to God. And the way he talks to him is like the way you would talk to a friend.
Yeah.
He's snarky and sarcastic.
If I were a rich man.
Right. But then as you get into the New Testament, all of a sudden it's just this like lay prostrate and be humble in front of the Lord. They lose the negotiation. They lose the back and forth. It's just a fourth.
Yeah. I think it's a major difference that we see between the Jewish faith and the modern capitalist Christian version. I think the capitalism part is important. It depends on what country you're in. If you're from a culture that's more humble than a culture that's been steeped in the glory of capitalism for 100 years, then your perspective on these things, I think, is different. And your approach to faith or your approach to prayer is different. I think back to the original point that you were sort of bringing up there, Blind Alchemist, the identity of God is different in those cases, right? The God that you're praying to, it's not the same God that you're praying to if you're having that sort of friend-to-friend conversation or you're looking for a sense of commiseration. But the idea that I'm trying to get across is who this God is different. It's a different God than the God you ask to help make sure that you have good cupcakes at your surprise birthday party.
That's a good. Do you pray to different gods in different ways for different things? Are there certain gods to pray to for cupcakes, good cupcakes?
I think it's funny that you mentioned the capitalist church, the capitalist Christian church. When was the last time either of y'all went to a mega church?
I've never been. I had a megachurch type experience when I was 14 years old, and I went to a Southern Baptist Christian yearly
Conference
thing, and we went to this giant megachurch and had megachurch experiences there, but that's the only time I've ever experienced that. But this place was huge. It was like a football stadium inside. It was crazy. It wasn't quite as big as a football stadium, but it felt like a football stadium. It was that big.
One of the local churches here that's what I would consider a mega church because they broadcast to a satellite facility on the other side of town.
Yes, that's exactly this kind of scenario.
But they have ATMs in the lobby.
Yeah, so you can get money for your...
So you can donate right off your debit card.
I feel like the church has gotten so involved in sensationalism, especially with the worship services. It's sensationalism and emotionalism. It's not true worship. It's affecting the church as a whole because they think this is what worship really is. And you're like, no, we need to go back.
When they started putting the words on the wall.
And you start going back and doing that Tav stuff, and actually having that conversation back and forth with God, because I think that's probably closer to what you need to be doing than anything else. Yeah, if you're doing a prayer for something hyper specific, that's why they have the Lord's Prayer. That it's for specific daily things, daily bread. And
is it any different than, say, the giant cathedrals or basilicas from old Catholic churches in Europe? Those grand cathedrals were built for the same purpose, to woo and awe the audience, to make you experience the awesomeness of God.
I think you should ask the question, when has the church not been capitalistic?
Well, capitalism as a concept, I don't think was really founded until the 1700s.
Doesn't matter when the concept was defined and established. it's been going on for a long ass time. You know what I mean?
I think it's something different than capitalism.
That's the thing with the day. Everything has to have a fucking label.
It was certainly about power, and part of that power was wealth, I would agree. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you with the concept of the foundation of wealth giving the power to the church and the reach of the church having its power built in wealth. But the idea of capitalism, I think my point about that was more about the selfish nature of prayer. I think that goes hand in hand with this idea of I get what I want. I should get what I want because I deserve it, I think is a fundamental result of the American capitalist perspective. We teach our children that if you have money, you can get what you want. It's this idea of like reward that I think is the point that I was trying to make. When you don't have anything, you don't have that perspective on the world. Your perspective is more about survival or more about just making it through the woes of the day. You might pray, please God, let me survive this long, dark winter, but that's not the same thing as what I'm talking about with the cupcakes and yada yada.
It's interesting that you're talking about the rewards of getting what you want. But Christ's message isn't really about that. His message is your reward comes after you die, you know?
Or that the reward is in giving to others rather than receiving.
Right. But also, I was going to say, when you go back to the Old Testament, the Hebrews didn't really have a concept of heaven. So there was no reward ever. The reward was just you did the right thing. So
yeah, or you got to continue to live because your particular sacrifice got rain.
Right. But there's never a promise of a reward.
Yeah.
When did the notion of heaven come into play? Is that another one of those things like we were talking about with the other Gnostic comparisons of how they needed to bridge the gap between the pagan religions, the multi-deistic religions, and the single deity? And in order to do that, they brought in all those different celebrations and they moved the holidays and histories of things to match up with that. But there was always this concept of Valhalla or the concept of...
Not necessarily, like the Greeks really don't have anything like that.
In the Hellenistic Pantheon, there's not a Nirvana or Valhalla.
No, there's an afterlife, but everybody seems to go to the same place.
Well, but isn't there a god of the underworld, just like the god of Hades and Egyptian?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the underworld isn't necessarily...
Yeah, they have a god of the underworld, and he sits in judgment and dishes out whatever, but it's not like the place is known to be a good place. We don't have the good place and the bad place. It's just, this is where you go when you die, and if you're nice here, then they'll be nice to you there.
You can join Zeus in Mount Olympus, but it's not necessarily this...
No, it's not Mount Olympus. It's underground.
In the Arabic religions, there's a concept of the reward of the 72 virgins or whatever.
Right.
But that's post-Christianity. That must have come from something prior.
Is that post-Christianity?
Yeah, the Muslim religion didn't come about until about 500 AD.
Okay.
600 AD, somewhere around there. That's when Muhammad lived.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that idea of the 72 virgins and whatever their concept of heaven was original to Islam or if that's from a previous religion.
I don't know of anywhere else that says that.
Right.
Yeah.
I do a lot of that whole find one thing here and try to find it everywhere else.
Right.
And that's one of the things that seems to be unique to them, the promise of a bunch of women. Your own harem.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Solomon had thousands. Right here, he didn't even have to go to heaven. Solomon's story also deals with other gods. He gave money to his wives to build temples to other gods.
Yeah.
And the God of the Bible still favored him. Why is that? Why does he overlook Solomon's transgressions?
Why does he overlook David? Murder, adultery. Yeah. None of these biblical characters are fine, upstanding citizens in any way, form, fashion. Maybe 5 or 6 of them. Maybe Ruth. And they still get God's favor as well. Maybe they have a change of heart or whatever. One of the disciples had a limp, bad leg or some shit, and Jesus didn't heal him because he wouldn't heal him. He was like, how much bigger a message is it that you unhealed still believe? So I'm not going to heal you.
Is that James the Less, the obscure apostle of Christ?
I forget which disciple it was.
What kind of woke crap is this? You got to include disabled people all the time, right?
Wow.
Have you heard the recent gripe from some of the evangelicals is when their pastor does the whole Sermon on the Mount? They're like, what kind of liberal agenda are you trying to push here, preacher?
Wow.
I ask them all the time, you know, the story of Jesus taking the 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread.
Yeah. 5 fish and 2 loaves.
And then he feeds everyone. That is the most socialist thing I've ever heard in my life. That is the most socialist act I've ever heard of.
I think we might be missing the point there.
One could argue that principles of socialism would be biblical in nature, or at least Christian in nature.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I'm damn near a communist, y'all. So.
Oh, no. Great. Our show just got canceled. Thanks.
I think conceptually, the idea behind communism is not completely flawed,
It's a bit like tithing anyway, isn't it?
but it is an idealistic vision, which is why it's hard to succeed, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Idealistic visions, utopian visions are, I don't know, especially if they have people at the head of them, they're impossible to achieve.
I'm going to tell you why. The same reason that a lot of businesses never will fail. And it's because it's hard to get other people to help you chase your dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So it's hard to rally people behind a common effort. And that's where communism kind of falls short. The kind I like is what they call anarcho-communism, which like really doesn't have any kind of government at all in it. It's classless, stateless, moneyless. There's no reason for any of those things.
Right, right. Because there really isn't.
Because we can do it as people anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any sort of organization that has the word anarchy in the title is suspect in my theory, but, you know,
It's not an organization. That's the whole thing, is you can't organize.
Yeah, okay. Well, I like this concept.
Your only organization is between you and the people around you, or the people that you can actually build relationships with. There's no magical entity that's going to take care of you in a city far, far away. Everybody collectively sends their money to, and then it gets divvied up. No, that's not how it happens. It's I make friends with my neighbor who has a bunch of chickens, and when he needs something done, I help him do it, and he gives me a chicken.
Right, right.
The communal aspect of it is that I guess it's a localized commune.
Yes.
Yes.
Here's something, though. You know, we already have all these factories and everything. They're already built. They're already established. So we're already in a consumerist, product-driven society.
Oh, yeah.
So if we got rid of the money and everything, let's say you wanted a new TV. So you would go work for the people that make TVs. Just go work in their factory for however long they decide you have to work to earn whatever TV you want.
Right.
You know, if you want a car, go work in the factory that makes car parts long enough to get a car.
Yeah, I like that idea in theory, but I don't know that the TVs would have ever been invented, because I think the desire to make all these things that we don't require, that are luxuries, are strictly an outcome of the wealth that our modern society affords us. If you don't have that type of wealth on the back end, that's the dubious thing about the 1%. You know, it's completely horrible that there is a 1% that exists, but if the 1% didn't exist, we wouldn't have things like
cell phones,
televisions, or iPhones, I don't think. Yeah.
Air conditioning.
Well, we might have air conditioning. Air conditioning, not in the state that we have it today, where we could air condition giant skyscrapers, because I don't think we'd have skyscrapers, but we would have some kind of air conditioning, because it's a fundamentally very simple concept, the idea of air conditioning. You don't have to have microprocessors to create an air conditioner.
Part of my theory on that was that capitalism does promote progress. And communism doesn't. There's no reward for progress, or not much of one anyway. To invent a new thing, it's not like you're going to get rich up from it.
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors. Just imagine this could be your advertisement. Please reach us at the Blind Alchemy Podcast at gmail.com to provide sponsorship. And now, back to the show.
Unless everyone's behind it. If everyone's on board, that's the progress kicker in communism.
Like I said, it's hard to get people to follow your dream.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That is my least favorite fucking phrase. I heard it a lot. Teamwork makes the dream work. This ain't my dream, ho. I don't want to be doing this at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're taking away from my time to be able to pursue my dream. Having a fucking do here chase this bullshit paper. I'm about to get worked up about mandatory economic slavery because we're all slaves now.
Well, don't forget to tithe your 10% to the church. Because God's got to get his cut.
Yeah, and that's another misunderstanding of a Jesus quote right there. You know where he says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's?
Oh, yeah.
The coins that he said give to Caesar had Caesar's picture on them. So he was like, yeah, Caesar can have what's his. Fuck Caesar.
Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's.
Caesar ain't got shit but this little gold coin. Fuck him. I got everything else. Ah, well, okay. I don't want to get worked up on
I
it.
have the hearts of the people.
The hearts and the minds.
This is all part of God's plan, though. Capitalism is it's all part of God's plan.
Yes, it is. Eventually, we have to learn to break free of slavery. Oh.
I found something that said 200 years before the birth of Christ, there was this concept that started to develop in Judaism, or Gnosticism, or Valentinianism, or however you categorize that notion of religion. Maybe it was about 200 years before Christ was born that the idea of the afterlife came about.
Yes, in the Old Testament, when you died, you went to a place called Sheol, which was literally just like a place underground where you waited until Judgment Day.
It's like purgatory.
Kind of, yeah. It was just you were on pause until...
What was that concept of Judgment Day in the Old Testament?
Where you would go before God and be judged. Everybody did it at once, though.
Was it the concept of Ragnarok, where like it's the end of the world?
Yeah, I think it was.
Judgment Day.
Yeah.
Well, there's also ideas of course, reincarnation and karma was around as an idea before the idea of the afterlife. And in some ways, those are concepts of the afterlife.
There's a Muslim prayer. It's kind of like the Lord's Prayer.
Yes.
Yeah.
That they say quite often. And it's praise be to God, the merciful, the benevolent, sovereign of the day of judgment. That's a line in that specifically. Sovereign of the day of judgment. You alone we worship, and to you alone we turn for help. Lead us in the straight path, the path of the righteous, not into the path who have gone astray or those who have incurred your wrath. I think that's how it goes.
Interesting.
It's on the little prayer rugs. A lot of times it'll have a verse in Arabic. What do they call them? Sutra?
Yeah, I think that's what they're...
That's a very common one.
Well, sutra's more of a Hindi perspective, isn't it, than Arabic?
I can't remember what they don't call them verses. They have another name for their lines in the Quran. I can't remember what the actual thing is, but...
An ayah is a verse in the Quran. The ayat, plural of ayah, are statements of varying length, are marked by a number, and make up the surah, which is the equivalent of a chapter. In the Quranic context, the word ayah means evidence, sign or miracle, and in Islam may refer to things other than Quranic verses, such as religious obligations or cosmic phenomena. There are 114 surah, the plural of surah, or chapters of the Quran. Each surah is of unequal length. The shortest surah, Al-Kawthar, has only 3 ayat, while their longest, Al-Baqarah, contains 286 ayat. 86 surah are classified as Meccan, as they were revealed before the migration of Muhammad to Medina. which is known as the Hijra, while 28 surah are classified as Medinan, as they were revealed after.
Anyway, the one that they use all the time actually includes sovereign of the day of judgment to remind you that you will be judged.
Like, what is after the day of judgment? So let's say you pass the judgment.
That's your 72 virgins.
Well, prior to that notion, though, right? If we're talking about the concept of judgment being around before the concept of heaven, what was the outcome of judgment? I mean, at that point, you're on a different plane, right? You're not of an earthly plane. Because the modern Christian idea of heaven is conceptually on a spiritual plane, but of an earthly desire.
That's the Divine Comedy. Have you ever read that?
Just sections of not
Dante Alighieri.
Yeah.
That's where our modern concepts of heaven and hell come from.
That's right. That's right. It's based on this fictional novelistic idea.
Purgatorio, Paradiso, and Inferno.
Yeah. And there's no mention of heaven or hell anywhere in the Bible or in like Jesus' teachings. Well, hell maybe, but not heaven.
I think he refers to as Gena.
He doesn't really say heaven. He says the kingdom of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And he also says the kingdom is within.
That's right.
Yes.
Heaven's within you.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the whole major difference between, I would say...
How perfectly Buddhist of him.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. The modern concept, the modern idea of God versus the Gnostic idea of God. If we want to get to where that idea of God, that's one of the points where I think it makes a drastic turn. When there's this concept of the idea of spirituality or grace or nirvana or Valhalla or the divine kingdom is within, which I think is the notion that all deep religious scholars get to eventually, which I think is a much older religious concept.
Oh, I thought.
Versus the concept of heaven as a place that I'm trying to achieve, a victory, a goal that I'm trying to achieve that's external from myself on a different plane.
Very well could be both, couldn't it?
So it changes from a consequence to a reward.
Well, yeah, I mean, but rewards are consequences.
This is what you may get versus this is what you need to work towards.
I see your point. The idea of heaven versus hell or the judgment. Yeah, but there's that concept in all the ancient Egyptian perspectives of you get placed on the scale. Your soul gets placed on the scale, and
right.
If you achieve one balance
So
of
weigh your heart.
Yeah, your heart.
And the idea of karma is sort of like that. The bastardization of the idea of karma, but it's sort of the idea of you can tip the scale towards more pleasant reincarnation if you achieve certain goals which your whatever has decided you need to achieve in this reincarnated life. But I think that the ideas of karmic achievement are very much different than the idea of if I'm good and I don't say the dirty words and I don't covet my friends' wives and I don't break the 10 Commandments, I'm going to get my reward. I think that's a very different thing than the idea of karma. And the God that you're thinking of in these ideas, it's a different God. In other words, it's the God as schoolmarm, disciplinarian God versus the idea of God as the all ever-loving, ever-present, omnipotent everything, which is inside of all of us, which is us, which is, I don't know, dualistic versus Unitarian concepts of God, maybe?
Well, they couldn't make any money off that, so the capitalist Christians came along and gave us that God that lets us do whatever the fuck we want right up until the last minute. Then we can just say, I'm sorry, Jesus. You forgive me?
Here's some money. Let me in the gate, beat him.
All right. I will donate a new gym to the church.
I think that's another concept that's commonized. I don't think the notion is you can receive forgiveness based on requesting forgiveness is not the same thing as you can wait till the last minute and procrastinate and just say, hey man, I believe that shit, whatever. Put me in, coach, I'm ready, I want to play. I think that's different than the idea of truly accepting the knowledge or this wisdom of what is the reality of the reality. I think that's a different thing.
Hey, worked for the thief.
There's some that believe that you can earn your way in just in your works without ever even receiving the message or knowing the message or having the decision to make.
I would hope so, because I think that concept of you're going to hell if you don't know Jesus' name is one of the most wackadoo bullshit things I've ever heard in my life.
It's because he loves you. It's because he loves you. You have to know his name, though.
He only loves you if you know his name.
But his name's not Jesus?
Right. You stop believing, you stop receiving. Yeah, I think there's plenty of people out there that have done enough good works that they should definitely slide right in. Gandhi, maybe? I don't know.
Well, I think Gandhi knew who Jesus was. He probably didn't believe in Jesus, but he probably knew who Jesus was.
Actually, I think they do believe in him, just not that he's a Messiah. They even give him some divinity because the Hindu make everybody a god. Even the Muslims knew of Christ. He's considered one of their prophets.
Yeah.
They believed in him. They just didn't believe that he was son of the divine or anything. But they value his word as a prophet.
So what did Muhammad do to outrank Jesus?
I don't think he outranks him. He's just a new reincarnation of Jesus.
He doesn't really outrank him.
So they're on the same level. They're both prophets? Is that the deal?
Yeah, that's the prophet level.
Okay.
For well over a decade, I saw this little notation in a lot of the stuff that I was reading, and it never clicked with me until I talked to my kid that's studying classics in college. PIBA, P-B-U-H. Have you ever seen that? Behind a prophet's name? Whenever you start studying the Muslim stuff, it'll pop up, and it stands for peace be upon him, because they say that behind all of them's name.
Okay.
And so when they're actually writing it out, printing it out in text, it'll have in parentheses right behind it, Piba. P-B-U-H. Peace be upon him.
That's fine. I like that.
But yeah, they believed in Christ, that he was a prophet. Muhammad was just another prophet. They don't have a Messiah. They don't have anybody that was divine that walked the earth.
So it's closer to Judaism in that way. The Messiah has yet to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There are a variety of different interpretations in Islam about Jesus. Jesus is mentioned in the Quran with the name Isa and various titles. His prophethood is preceded by that of Yahya and succeeded by Muhammad. In Islam, Jesus is believed to be the penultimate prophet and a human messenger of God. In the Quran, he is described as the Messiah, Al-Masih, sent to guide the children of Israel, miraculously born of a virgin, performing miracles, accompanied by his disciples, rejected by the Jewish religious establishment, but not as crucified or dying on the cross, nor resurrected, rather as miraculously saved by God and ascending into heaven to return before the day of judgment to slay the false Messiah or Dajjal. It is said that Jesus prophesied the coming of Muhammad, although he used the name Ahmad. Many Muslims believe that Jesus' original message was altered, Tarif, after his ascension. Common interpretations of the Quran lack the orthodox Christian concepts of Christology regarding the unity of his human and divine natures, or hypostasis, and suggest that the concept of the divinity of Jesus Christ, as the Judeo-Christian God incarnate, or Son of God, stands in opposition to the central and important Islamic belief in the oneness of God or Tawhid.
The stuff that's written before Jesus was born, a lot of it is really written with the idea of multiple gods. I did a video once about solving this lifelong question I had about let us make man in our image. I mean, who was he talking to? And there's actually a word for it. It's called monolatry. They have multiple gods, but they really only worship one. They revere one of them, but they kind of admit the other ones exist.
One is higher than all the rest of them. Probably where we get the most high from.
Right. I'm trying to remember the verse where they talk about God sits on the council of gods. There's an actual verse where it says that he is in the Pantheon, but he's the head. He sits in judgment.
Yeah, that's one of the weird things about three religions having the same origin point. None of them are like Yeah, it's the same God. No, that's a different God than your God, and this God is different than that God, and they're all the same origin point.
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors. Just imagine this could be your advertisement. Please reach us at the Blind Alchemy Podcast at gmail.com to provide sponsorship. And now, back to the show.
One of my first trips down that road was in my early 20s. I worked for a guy that I called Super Christian. He wore long sleeve shirts all through the summer, would not even roll up his sleeves. He was Apostolic, they call it, which is to the right of Pentecostal, but not quite Mennonite. I traded books with him, and the one that I got from him was called Abraham, A Journey to the Center of Three Faiths.
Yes.
Because that's like where it all kind of branched apart, was right there with Abraham. The story of him going up on the mount with the sun. The Hebrews and the Muslims, one of them believes that it was one son, Isaiah, and the other one believes it was the other son, Ishmael.
Okay.
And I think that to the Muslims, the elder son is the one that was to be sacrificed. And it's like a bigger deal. It's a bigger sacrifice to sacrifice your firstborn, your eldest.
Mm-hmm.
Also, where the stories kind of differ is that in the Quran, the son knows why he's going up on the mountain, and he's cool with it. He may not like it, but he's accepting of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Christian version, or in the regular Bible that we have, he's kind of suspicious, but he doesn't know. You know, he's asking his dad, "Hey, Dad, we're not taking a bull with this. Don't worry about it. God will provide."
Yeah. We got one.
But in the Quran version, he knows full well when they head up the mountain why he's going up the mountain. I think that's kind of a neat little difference. I went down that road of identifying all the little differences between the Quran and what's in the regular Bible. Ours is pretty much aligns with the Torah. The first 5 books are pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much deviation. But once you get past that, you'll see a lot of different little idiosyncrasies, I guess you could say, that pertain to each different religion a certain way. There's a few stories that are different. There's stories that are in some that aren't in others. Solomon was a big difference. I love the stories about Solomon.
Solomon is not in the Muslim?
He is. Oh. There's nothing in the Christian faith about jinn.
Right.
You know what the jinn are?
We refer to them as genies now, but they're kind of demons that have a weird name. Lower demon.
That's part of the Muslims' belief system. What Christians call demons, they call jinn, of course, but Solomon actually commanded an army of them.
Mm-hmm. There's some crazy stories if you read the Book of Solomon.
I actually traded some videos and was talking to a guy that was in the UAE about all the little differences. It was a trip to see him because he was like one of those all-white Muslim, you know what I mean?
Nope.
Yeah.
Everything. It was pretty neat to talk to people like that around the world. TikTok's great for that.
Yeah.
But we got to compare some stories, and it was really neat to get the inside. I've known plenty of Muslims, but I've never been able to interact with someone from that part of the world to know exactly how they teach. I was asking questions like, there are certain characters of the Bible that we have certain feelings about, and it's just instilled upon us as we learn, you know, Jezebel's a Jezebel.
Right.
Stuff like that. But I didn't know if there were certain ways that they were taught and things that were kind of instilled in them growing up in the Muslim faith. So, I got to learn a lot about it.
That's very interesting. I had a conversation with a practicing Muslim about that, particularly Ishmael, and that Ishmael also falls under the covenant that God made with Abraham. And that's why there are 12 princes of Islam and there's 12 tribes of Judah. This guy asked me to leave his house because I'm not supposed to know that. He told me that. He said, "You're not supposed to know that. I need you to leave." And I'm like, what? What do you mean I'm not supposed to know that? That's very confusing to me. Why is that a big deal? Why is that hidden? And the thing on my mind lately is, why did Yahweh choose Abraham for the covenant in the first place?
He considered Abraham righteous. one of the most righteous.
Okay.
Most people had sinned a lot against God.
What do we mean by most righteous? Like,
He kept God's law.
Abraham wasn't just which God? Because Yahweh emerges from the Canaanite pantheon. So why that particular deity?
Maybe that was part of establishing that he was the greatest, was picking a faithful, a devout to favor and bless.
Yeah, could be.
Are these depictions of Abraham in the writings that Abraham made himself, Abraham as the righteous one, or are they observations made by third parties?
We don't know if he actually wrote anything himself. He also falls under that whole kind of like Moses. We don't know that he was an actual figure,
Right.
or if he was just kind of an amalgamation of all the stories just applied to one name.
Yeah, because this stuff is very hard to nail down, even timeline-wise, because what is the phrase? Antediluvian, which is before flood, right?
Yeah.
And where is it coming from post-flood? And there's some business with the sons of Noah that gets a little like, what?
Didn't he get drunk and molest them or something?
No, that's not what.
No, that's Lot. Lot got
Yeah,
drunk and
that's Lot. He slept with his daughters. That's not what discovering your mother's nakedness or whatever the particular phrase is. It actually means he did a little Oedipus thing there. That's what that means. He had sex with his mother. It didn't mean he like found her naked somewhere, or his father's nakedness, or whatever it is, whatever the particular phrase is. And I think it's Ham. Ham is supposed to be the origin of all black people, and you're like, screwing your mom makes your babies turn colors? I don't understand that stuff.
You know, if any book needed to be banned,
God, that's all. No, you can't ban it.
they fuck a lot in this book.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in there.
I mean, it's weird sex stuff.
Which book are you talking about?
The Bible,
Oh, the Bible in general.
like as a whole.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, there's lots of. I've actually got a book somewhere called The X-Rated Bible, and it outlines all the dirty stuff, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, it's full of it. You know, all the times that they ransacked a city, God told him to go forth and rape the women. Go, take their daughters.
Wow. Take everything that's not nailed down.
Because God loves you.
Well, I guess there's all sorts of conquests that have been made in the name of God, I think, throughout time and history.
Oh, yeah. Slavery. They want to enslave the race that they defeat.
Yeah. That's not really slavery, is it? That's prisoner of war, right? Is there a difference?
Yes, you're forcing them into labor, servitude. You can be a POW and just be in a cage.
I see.
I don't know. It's a horrible point of view to take or topic to discuss, but I think if I was a prisoner of war, it might be a better alternative to be one of the working class prisoners of war rather than one that has to sit in a cage. I know that the working class are often beat and tortured, but I just can't imagine being locked in a cage with nothing to do, with no food, and
It sucks, let me tell you.
There ain't no war.
yeah, that would be absolute hell.
Yeah, that could probably be mind-numbingly torturous.
It's the first thing I ask for is a Bible because they'll give me one every time. Not that I believe any of it, but I know I can get it.
Give me the Bible because I can have it.
Put my hand on an asset of some kind,
Yeah,
a resource.
better than a button thrown over there in the corner.
Anything to read,
So, yeah,
anything to do with your mind.
on a few occasions I've been put in a cell, and that was the first thing I asked for.
I don't know. I still put forward the idea that the messianic or the Messiah concept, these are two different things. It's the incarnation of God, but the words of the Messiah, the teachings of the Messiah, I think they're much older. I think they are from Hindu or even older than that, from ancient Chinese teachings or ancient, I don't know what's older, but I think that concept is woven throughout all the different perspectives because there's not always a Messiah, but the teachings of the Messiah, the golden rule, if you will, or the notion that everything that you need to solve all your problems is within yourself. And if you just share love with other people, you will find the reward of doing the right thing. I think that notion predates, I don't think it's one of the oldest religious concepts, but I think it's right up there on that list. I think it comes from much earlier and it's adapted by the Christians. In other words, we already have this idea. We're just going to put that into our concept as well. And we're going to mix that with this notion that this one guy, he was a prophet.
Right.
But I don't know that that's not, like you were talking about Moses or Abraham before. Maybe he wasn't one guy. Maybe he is a amalgamation or an interpretation of his acts. These stories may not be about a specific person. They may be about a conceptual archetype or a ethical archetype.
Right. There were many people that were wandering around teaching these things.
Yeah.
They just put them all onto one person's name.
Earlier when I was talking about why make the covenant with Abraham, what was so special about Abraham? Abraham was a really smart dude. He would have been a wise man, a magi. He was stupid smart, and other people from all over the place came and asked his advice. So there may have been something we don't know about Abraham being the reason that God chose him, other than his righteousness. And what exactly does the righteousness infer?
Honestly, he could have just been the most successful sheep herder.
Yeah.
He was just the one that everybody turned to because he had the biggest camp.
Yeah, he knew what the fuck he was doing because he has to. Look at all the sheep. He's got a shitload of sheep.
Right. God must absolutely love him. Look at that. Look at that herd. God has truly blessed him.
There's some funny stuff in the book of Abraham.
I went to a church with my eldest daughter. She has recently refound the Lord. And I'm not scared of churches. I'll go. I'm not a fan of them, but, used to I would like, and now I'm like, yeah, I'll see what this motherfucker's saying.
Yeah.
So the lesson that day was about Jacob and how he had worked for 7 years and then didn't get the woman he was promised. So he had to work for another 7 years to get the other one. And I'm like, and y'all are just cool with him having multiple wives, right? I guess just forget about that part. But, there was a deal at the end of all this with Rehoboth or whatever dude's name is.
Their dad, yeah.
Yeah, their dad. And it was that he got to keep all the blemished stock. And then it said that his flock grew bigger than the original guys. And the way that the pastor was preaching this was that God really blessed him after all this. If you read that story, they're kind of suspicious that he's doing something on purpose, And it's not just he gets to go through one time and pick them all. It's a continuous thing. He gets to continually pick all the blemished ones. So, yeah, it's going to grow. In fact, they were kind of mad at him about it. Jacob goes on to fight with God, wrestles with God.
Yeah.
I think that's another concept that is lost in the New Testament is the fact that people actually fight with God and walked away.
I always thought that was metaphorical, the concept of fighting with God. I thought that was a description of an internal battle, wrestling with God.
He walked away with a limp. He didn't walk away unharmed.
Right.
He walked away injured. So
it might be metaphorical, and it usually is considered such because that was a vision or whatever that happened in a dream. But still, the idea that you can be at odds with God, that was something that they completely lose in the New Testament. There's no, if you're on this side of the divine veil, then your opinion really doesn't fucking matter. Just fall in line.
Yeah.
Get on your knees and give me your 10%.
Oh, wow.
Capitalism.
Wow.
So what about the idea, again, of God as the only God?
Yeah, but which God is the only God?
Which God is the only God?
What are your thoughts on it, Mr. Alchemist? You haven't spoken much in a long while because we've been interrupting you.
No, this is fine. I've just been going on.
All right, speaking of your bathroom wall, we'll pick him apart.
Okay, pick me apart.
Do you believe that the Old Testament God is the same as the New Testament?
No.
Okay, which God do you think that they were talking about on the bathroom wall? Old Testament or New
I
Testament?
don't know. That's the question, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
That was my question. Which were you talking about, Yeshua? Were you talking about Yahweh? You're obviously not talking about Odin because you've got that all marked out.
Yeah.
Okay. And over here where you've got Satan marked out, I should take a better picture of that graffiti.
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors.
We ain't got no sponsors. What you talking about? This whole damn podcast is brought to you by me because I'm the fucking sponsor here.
And now, back to the show.
In the graffiti that you saw, someone wrote Hell Odin. Is that what they wrote?
Hail Odin.
And then someone else crossed that out.
Hell Odin, and Odin is marked out, and it says God is the only God.
So theoretically, maybe this person was a Christian and they saw the Hell Odin and they marked out the Hell Odin and then they wrote God is the only God.
That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, because I don't think Jews would actually take the time to scratch on. Like, they wouldn't fuck up other people's stuff.
That's a bit presumptuous.
The Jews have never graffitied a thing in their life. I don't know why the Jew talks like
I
that.
don't think we can prejudge either way.
Christians are more likely to leave their mark. I'll put it that way.
I don't think we can prejudge either way. Like the mark of the cross,
Or any kind of mark at all.
the mark of the agave.
They're more
fish.
likely to say, I was here. And Jews are just kind of like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like, flush the toilet and leave. Schlemiel.
Schmuck.
Yeah. What a schmuck.
What a schmuck.
We were talking about social media at work, and I told the guy that social media is like the graffiti on the bathroom wall now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Digital graffiti.
Absolutely. At least comments or posts things. But it's better. You know, it is much better than graffiti in some ways.
It's better. Like, it's cheekier.
Well, like, some TikTok videos are damn funny, and I've never really read any graffiti that just... I mean, there was a couple of jokes that I read back when I was a little kid that were written on walls.
Oh, there's a good one at our work. It's, don't beam me up right now, Scotty. I'm taking a pee. And then it, like, the line just goes straight up.
That is a good one.
Yeah, I hadn't seen good graffiti in a while either. That was a good one.
What does happen if you get teleported when you're in the process of excrementing? When you reappear, you're suddenly pissing all over the deck.
In the transporter room. Put it short out the transporter.
Scotty's pissed.
Scotty's like, oh man, not again. Come on.
Scotty's pissed. He's got to get a mop. Oh, man.
Damn it, Ted, get the mop.
Make the Vulcan do it. He doesn't have any feelings about this sort of thing.
That's wrong.
It's only logical to clean it up.
Okay, Vulcans have immense emotions. They just don't accept them. They're just like, no, I don't need that.
They don't project that. You're right.
Don't you pay attention to Star Trek, Theo?
You're right. You're right.
Man.
They're the ultimate stoic.
Yeah, they really.
They're just stoic about it.
I found this activity most distasteful. I would not wish to repeat it.
But necessary, Captain.
Damn it, Jim.
So God is the only God written on a bathroom stall. We're in agreement that we think it's the Christian God that they're talking about. Isn't it the notion of thou shalt have no idols before me? Isn't that the point that they're trying to make?
Absolutely.
I believe that's where we're aimed at. But
Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
you can't claim your God is God because God is just a title. God has to have a name, okay?
Well, isn't that a misconception? God is God because he is the God. It's a capital G, so it's his name. His name is God, and the notion of God is God.
No, they just...
Technically, it was the first word of the sentence, so it was supposed to be capitalized anyway.
Well, yes, but if he had written the only God is God, I think the last God would have been capitalized.
Okay.
If you look at the picture, both G's are kept.
Well, yeah, which is technically wrong, grammatically wrong. The second God should not be capitalized.
That's absolutely correct.
So are we speculating about a person that may have a level of ignorance that we have to account for in this scenario?
We're not... Well, no, I...
Right on a bathroom wall.
It doesn't really matter what the graffiti says. What we're discussing is the notion that there is only one God.
God has a name, right? Okay, and in the biblical tradition, it's just the four consonants, Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, because They took the vowels out so people couldn't use the name of God.
They didn't take the vowels out.
That's what I've been led to believe.
They
To keep the name hidden and secret, they just give you the tetragrammaton.
No.
Tetragrammaton.
Hebrew doesn't have vowels to begin with. They're kind of implied with the consonant. That's just the nature of the language. They didn't really take the vowels out. They never were there.
That's why there's like two different names. This is why Yahweh and Jehovah, right?
No, Jehovah is just what people said over the years.
I haven't followed the line of the change.
Okay, so the whole YHWH, that spelling has only risen in the past 20, 25 years. Before that, people didn't really use that. They didn't really understand it. So that's why up until that point, everybody said Jehovah. I mean, look at your letters.
From the Greek, right?
Instead of Y, it's a J.
Actually, it's an I.
Instead of a W, it's a V. So that's just what was used as an English transliteration, they call it,
Yeah.
up until about a quarter of a century ago. And then people started really pushing that other name. But in the original Hebrew, there's no vowels in anything. They don't use vowels the way that we use vowels. The vowels are already attached to the consonants and they change per the word.
Jehovah is what you're talking about. And those consonants are the tetragram. The name may be derived from the verbs that mean to be, to exist, to cause to become, or to come to pass. And later common substitutions in Hebrew are Elohim or Hashem.
El is actually a pronoun, but it is specifically a divine pronoun.
Mm-hmm.
Elohim is actually a plural pronoun. I think it specifically means male and female, if I'm not mistaken.
I am.
See, now here's another thing. Now, if we take a look over at the chakra system, I am is the root chakra. That's the power phrase for the root chakra. So is I am the God of the root physical plane. And the next plane, is there another God for that plane?
Well, that's why they say that God is in you. It's because it's in your chakra.
See, I thought the concept of I am is like what you were saying. It's the concept of the pleroma or the plural, the all that is. The am is being. It's not a description of a person, it's a description of a
State.
no,
The being is being.
everything.
Well,
Energy, the existence, what we call energy now in modern physics, what we call matter or mass or whatever it is that entropy is moving about. That is being, that is existence, that is what I am, or Elohim, or aren't these all the same concept? It's the plurality of everything. I don't know.
see, and that's why I brought this topic up, because I think a name is very important for understanding, because you've got 75 damn names for the same thing a lot of times. That's the problem with the English language for sure. So is he talking about everything that you're just talking, all those words that came out of your mouth? Is that what God is? Or is it something completely different? And how do we know that without a specific name?
Yeah, I think Bathroom Wall Guy is just talking about the capitalist Christian God.
Well, a name is just a label too, though, right? If you get into the concept of what is in a name,
Well, like I said, Elohim is technically a pronoun.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even a specific name.
It just means those divines.
Yeah, El is a pronoun and it's the masculine divine. It doesn't really mean this particular God. It's just a pronoun for the divine.
Yeah.
but that's different than the Yod He Vav He.
Adonai doesn't mean God either. Adonai means father.
Yeah, how about that?
If you take a look at all those words throughout the Bible where they made it say God or the Lord, they're all a different word that doesn't exactly mean God.
Well, yeah, and then there's the concept of Yod He Vav He may mean he will be. So there's this concept of time involved as well, that this is something that is in the future or some future tense.
Will come to pass.
Circling back around to the topic of Gnosticism, that's why I like the Gnostic school of thought, is because their God is outside all of that shit. He's like, yeah, I'm over here. I'm here. I've got my hierarchy, and some things happened in my hierarchy in my kingdom that created your kingdom, which in Christianity, they do have the Satan is the God of this world thing, which also makes the Gnostic creation story make sense to me.
There was talk about some Hellenistic writings that are alongside a lot of the Gnostic works where they find some of these things. And I know in the Greek Pantheon, there's people above Zeus, right?
Yeah.
And this is interesting because the top one, Onos, I believe, is the top one.
Chaos.
There was Onos and then Kronos.
It probably means chaos.
Onos is everything.
Chaos.
Like it's the all everything,
Mhm.
all encompassing. And then Kronos was the reflection, was the self-awareness. Look what I can do. And then everything came from under Kronos, all the other gods.
It probably means Gaia.
We were talking about the supreme, infinite, whatever makes the pleroma or barbello,
Barbelos, yes.
right? And then everything else comes from that instead of coming from the original.
Mm-hmm.
So they might have been kind of trying to incorporate that structure into their belief.
Could have been.
It doesn't come from the primary.
Which is similar to the Hindu idea of the Shiva with Brahma and Vishnu all being modes or personas that come out of the Shiva.
What's above the Shiva, though?
In this case, the Shiva is the origin, the all.
Right. But there would only be one in the tier below that, and then everything else would come from the secondary tier.
Well, I guess Brahma and Vishnu are more like the pleroma then, or the aeons, or the sort of personalities of God in the Gnostic concept.
I think those three right there fit the process of generate, order, destroy very succinctly.
I have to tell y'all this because you can appreciate it. Since you've brought up the Hindu thing, my father-in-law owned a convenience store.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife worked there along with a lot of the family. Like probably half the employees at this convenience store were all from the same family. The father-in-law sold it to the Hindus, right?
To
And
the Hindus, all the Hindus of the world.
Every Hindu on the planet.
they were Indian, they were Hindu. When they brought the little picture of Vishnu beheading somebody, they all flipped out. What kind of demonic shit is this?
Oh, really?
But one of the other things that I've always thought is that they are Seventh-day Adventists and they go to church devoutly.
Uh-huh.
In my mind, you just sold your family to the dollars of another god. That good old capitalist Christian ideology. Because when he sold the store, they all stayed working for him for a while. It was where the employees were
Think of this stock room.
in that area. Yeah.
Vishnu's usually pretty peaceful. It might have been a different god other than Vishnu.
Probably Shiva.
I shared falafel with them, though, so,
Falafel.
yeah.
Mm.
I have a Mediterranean deli that I go to,
Oh, yeah?
and I think they're either from Turkey or Lebanon, one of the two. I don't know. He has lamb, he has real gyros, and he makes a damn good Philly.
Oh, yeah.
But he also makes falafel, so I got some falafel from one international dude and went and ate with another international dude. I want to seem worldly.
Yeah, you want to seem worldly. You want
Yeah.
to seem hip. I'm all inclusive.
It's good to include other cultures in your learnings. I think that's a concept that we're trying to achieve here with this discussion. What is the name of God? Because there is the idea that everyone's God is a different God, and everyone's concept of what the divine is or what the ethical or moral position is different than everyone else's, which, depending on your religion, God may not be the epicenter of morality like he is in the Christian faith. But the concept of who it is that you must face in the morning, or who it is that you must face when you look in the mirror, or who it is that you must face when you reach your point of judgment, your judgment day, if you will, or your Ragnarok, or your end times, or your whatever that might mean to you, the day of your death, or the moment you reach the afterlife. I think that is different and individual for everyone. And so the fundamental idea of identifying what God is, regardless of the name that you give him, or she, or genderless God, or the everything, the energy, the manifestation of reality that is your God, whatever your God might be, it's individualistic to everyone, and that's one of the things. Humans cannot ever experience the same thing as other humans because our brains are all significantly separated. Even though we're in the same place at the same time, talking about the same things, our experience of it is unique, and I think everyone's experience of God is unique, and what those symbols, those names, those aphorisms mean to the individual is going to be distinctly different for everyone else. So does it really matter what the name of God is? Because it's all a story we're each telling ourselves individually, right?
Now we will take a break for some advertisements. Please support our sponsors. Just imagine this could be your advertisement. Please reach us at the Blind Alchemy Podcast at gmail.com to provide sponsorship. And now, back to the show.
I mentioned Gandhi earlier. I think he said, my religion is between me and my creator.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a personal thing.
I agree with that. I wholeheartedly.
We all have to do our own living, and we all have to do our own dying. And we have to contend with our God.
I do think it is important to define the concept of what it is that you're discussing before you discuss it in order to make headway. So I think it's a good point that you make, Alchemist, that we need to define what it is we mean when we speak of God in these ways. But I think at the end of the day, it's always going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, without clarity, there's only confusion, and God is not a God of confusion, you know. Or is he?
Anybody told that to the people that wrote the Bible?
No.
It's pretty confusing.
Yeah, I know. It can be.
So actually, I think when we're trying to figure out what they mean when they say God, at the end of the day, it's still just inside of you.
Yeah.
Whatever that person's concept, like you said, it's all individual. You can try to nail it down, but unless you can think in their brain.
It's kind of where I've come to a point where it's like, if I can't look in the mirror and see both Christ and the devil, then I'm missing the point. Because I am capable of both those states of perfect compassion and love like Christ and bitter evil as Satan. We'll just use those character names. You know, I can be both characters. In fact, I can even be a balance between those characters. I can, know when to be evil, because you're going to have to be sometimes.
We always are a balance. One person put it as we're a pendulum.
Ooh.
We're always swinging back and forth.
Yeah. I can see that.
Sometimes we're good, sometimes we're bad.
You take the good, you take the bad, and what you have are the facts of life. Dun, 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 dun.
My Paroma.
Sophia is the wisdom one. She had a son. She was awakened by the mind. The logos divine will makes the logos run. The Christ that come, you'll return to a Christ like my Paroma. Unoriginate origin. It's the source of life, was the principle. It was throughout Gnostic time. 7 or 8 major aeons. My Paroma. My Paroma.
Trying to streamline all our processes here at the Alchemy Labs, and I appreciate you for being guests, both of you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for being here with us. Our resident TikTok sensation, Lunchbox, glad you were here. Thanks for coming.
My tiny scissors.
She is brandishing tiny scissors at us, ladies and gentlemen.
You guys pique my intellectual curiosity.
Well, thank you. That was the whole point in the show at first. Finding a place where I could talk about the shit that I think about instead of football and beer and all the other dumb distractions in the world.
Distractions, that's what they all are.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are. All distractions.
Capitalist distractions.
Capitalist distractions from this very subject matter. And once again, with all due love and respect, Buck Johnson, glad you were here for us. Always a good time to listen to you drone on for hours and hours and hours.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always a joy to talk with you. Always good to see Lunchbox. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for letting me espouse my bullshit.
Oh, no problem. This is what we do here. But anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. You can find us at, where can you find us, Ted? Yeah, there. YouTube and Spotify, you were correct, Ted. Thank you. It was a test. You're not very high today. I'm disappointed in you. Or I'm proud of you. Either way, how you want to take that, Ted. Thanks for listening. Email us. Do what you want to do. Write us. If you like what we're saying, say so. If you don't like what we're saying, fuck off. How about that one? Yep, Lunchbox sums it up best with that little riff. Don't encourage him, Lunchbox. His guitar collection is bigger than yours.
Thank you very much for being here with us. I'm your host, your guest on the quest as we float through the sea of frequency that we call reality. Love you, ladies and gentlemen. Please hit us up on every social platform you can find. Be safe out there. Come back and talk to me, all right?
We would love to receive your feedback and your questions for advice. Please email us or send us a voicemail. Our address is theblindalchemypodcast@gmail.com. Find, like, review, subscribe, and contact us on Facebook, Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and YouTube at The Blind Alchemy Podcast. All one word. Please subscribe to this podcast on your podcast player. We are available on Spotify, SoundCloud, and anchor.fm/The Blind Alchemy Podcast. Please tell all your friends, enemies, and any strangers to listen to our podcast. This will help us bring joy to everyone. Thanks, Mike Birbiglia. Text-to-speech services were provided by freetts.com and readloud.net. Special thanks to the Knack for inspiring the completely original parody My Aroma. Count the notes. The rhythm is different. I swear. This one's not really even that catchy and it's in the wrong key. We would like to extend a special thank you to the world's greatest musicians, sound designers, and engineers at Hellenic Productions for their help with the composition, performance, editing, production, and recording of both the original music and today's show. Please like their content on SoundCloud.